To start this session, I'm replacing Nayanika. Nayanika couldn't make it. She has a family emergency, so she couldn't make it today. I'm Ravi Sundaram, and so if you notice, the sessions today have this kind of McLuhan charge to them. Tomorrow the sessions are very straight. Early state of statistics, thinking policy, government as platform, fairly straight. In your face. So this today is stochastic life worlds, thinking tech, doing data, materiality is the message, and this session is liminal data. And I suspect it's basically about the field, right? That's basically what it is. So what we're going to do is start with Nasir. Nasiruddin is from the University of Chittagong. He's an anthropologist by training, and he's going to talk to us about fieldwork in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. So Nasir, you have 20 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the organizers for inviting me, and also personally Sandeep. I hope the whole day, the long sessions, we are tired. And I'm wondering whether my presentation will help you sleep. Because the whole day we talked about big data, open data, lots of digitalized, lots of things. But I'm just going to present something apart from this very, big data. It's more comprehensive, descriptive, and ethnographic data. Okay, I want to start like this. It's very personalized experience. The argument I'm going to present here very briefly, data, quote unquote, is an overused word and concept in research, as data are regarded as the backbone of research. Research needs data to be qualified as research, as data and its analysis determine the quality of research. However, data are not always value neutral and free from judgment, since data have lives in research, particularly in social research. As social scientists are part of the society, data in social sciences and their interpretations are not free from the social, cultural, political position of the researcher. This premise is more applicable in anthropological research, since ethnographic research demands deep personal involvement of the researchers in the life of the people studied. Apart from long-term personal involvement, data become very lively in the entire research, from the planning to the production of the research, because cultural relativism, reflexivity, gender sensitivity, power sensitivity feature the contemporary ethnographic genres. Now, the question is, what is data? Mean by anthropologist. What does qualitative research mean? What does it mean by descriptive data? What anthropologists claim? What is called comprehensive data, by which anthropologists claim a research ethnographic? What are the dilemmas when an anthropologist deals with the concept of informants, respondents, data providers? In Bengali we call Tottho data, data giver. Tottho data. So these are the actually questions that I'm dealing with in my presentation here. And these are the questions addressed in this paper with experience of doing fieldwork for 3 years in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. I stayed 3 years with the people, but I've been living very close by area for the last 2 decades. So it's very personal level involvement. And when I start writing, and actually I encountered kind of this data problem that I'm going to address. So let me give you some kind of idea what I have done so far. This is the Chittagong Hill Tracts in South Asia. You might know. This is a very corner, the borderland. And this is just 3 minutes footage to give you some kind of idea. The video. Not to make you, sleep, right?
The formal annexation came in 1860, where the Chittagong Hill Tracts was given the status of a separate district.
So the Chittagong Hill Tracts as a unit is just a colonial administrative invention.
বর্তমানে যে পার্বত্য চট্টগ্রাম বাংলাদেশের অংশ, এটা তো হচ্ছে সাউথ এশিয়া এবং সাউথ ইস্ট এশিয়ার মধ্যে একটা ব্রিজের মতো, একটা সেতু বন্ধন, মেলবন্ধন।
Chakmas and Tochingas speak Indo-European language, but the other 9 tribes or indigenous people, they speak Sino-Tibetan language. So this is the place where two great culture actually touches each other.
세사의 전도적이었군요. 어때? 근데 빛에 넣어라. 이제 두이 보이니 모전에 빛에 넣어라. 너가 저러. 오늘도 너 수는 너가 줘. 내가 너가. 막 건너버리 고다디네까지 라이바리.
With the Kaptai Dam, about 100,000 indigenous peoples were evicted from their lands.
They are not Bengali speaking, they are also not Urdu speaking. In this big game, they were onlookers.
1972 সালে যখন আমাদের প্রথম সংবিধান রচিত হয় বাংলাদেশে, তখনও কিন্তু মানবেন্দ্র নারায়ণ লারমা বলেছিলেন যে সংবিধানে আদিবাসীদের জায়গা দিতে হবে।
After what happened in 47, when the people in the Chittagong Tribe didn't get what they were expecting, and again in 71 when they didn't get what they expected, the fact that they felt in this new state we're not going to be treated as equals, we have to fight for our rights. The conflict escalated, the area became highly militarized.
আমরা আশা করেছিলাম যে সরকার মোটামুটি এবার আদিবাসীদের সাংবিধানিক স্বীকৃতি দিবে, কিন্তু আমরা পরবর্তী সময় জানলাম যে সরকার আদিবাসীদের স্বীকৃতি দিচ্ছে, কিন্তু সেটা আদিবাসী হিসেবে না।
There is no objective kind of definition on indigenous. And that's why the UN very, very wisely said, this is a question of self-definition.
যেরকম অগ্রাধিকার দিয়ে পার্বত্য চট্টগ্রাম চুক্তির জন্য কাজ করা উচিত ছিল, তারা সেরকম অগ্রাধিকার ভিত্তিক কাজ করে না।
Since 1997, which is now 14 years ago, many of these clauses have not been implemented.
So, this is a brief history of kind of confrontation. Officially, in Bangladesh state structure, there is no indigenous people. And it was declared in 1972 when Bangladesh became independent in 1971. And in 1972, first constitutions declared that the Bengalis shall be identified as the citizens of Bangladesh, only Bengalis. So the people of cultural difference, Chakma, Marma, Shautal, Garu, Manipuri, other people, they were excluded in the state formation in 1972. In 2011, there was a 15th amendment to the constitutions, and also it declared that there is no indigenous people in Bangladesh. So there's a huge debate. And for the regional autonomy, there was a kind of armed conflict, and it was officially ended in 1997. It's now 20 years on. I'm being a Bengali by ethnicity. I've been working with the indigenous people in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, so it's a huge debate. I will talk about later, but just this is a background. Now this is a borderland. Bangladesh, CHT is located in the borderland of India, Myanmar and Bangladesh. This is a village. There's a borderland between Bangladesh and Myanmar where I did my field work. I've been doing my field work for a long time. This is a village. So, and these are the people. Now, I'm going to present what actually I want to tell. Given the context, I have done field work for 3 years in the Chittagong Hill Tracts between 2004 to 2016. My research focuses on dialectical relations between the state and its margins, particularly where state produces the margins. While dominant historical works tend to depict the state as a bureaucratically centralized political institutions, my research attempts to grasp the state in its local societal dynamics beneath the institutional frameworks, particularly at its 4 dimensions: zones of limited statehood, that are peripheries, local state by which center governs the local, and the public discourse that represent dominant notions of stateness and ambivalent position of the political elites who represent the state and the margins. So from doing field work to writing on my research findings, I've been struggling with the critical questions that I posed. What I should call data in my research, which subsequently raises the questions that I started with. With critical cultural dissimilarities and the history of colonization, what kind of paradoxes an ethnographer with Bengali ethnic background encounters during fieldwork has been addressed here, and also how actually I write when I write about the data. I submitted the paper as a long paper, so I'm just giving the catchy point that I decided to read out here. In this section, I argue that what an ethnographer collects as data are something like his or her lived experience as she or he gains through the series of interactions, participations, and engagement with the people studied. And for that reason, data in ethnographic research is generally qualitative and comprehensive and descriptive in nature. Therefore, data have lives and politics. Data gradually become matured along with the researcher's experience. Data transform along with the changes of time and space, and data reform and reformulates the researcher's idea, thinking amidst endless production of meaning and interpretations. First, what I mean by qualitative, descriptive, and comprehensive data, that I'm going to give a very brief idea based on my own experience. The research that investigates aspects of social life which are not amenable in quantitative measurement is called qualitative data. I collected this Atkinson and Hamer's this book, Ethnography, Principle and Practice, page 249. Okay, so this is called. So in fact, the definition of quantitative data qualifies what qualitative data mean. Popular knowing is when data are not numerically organized, statistically sorted out, and figuratively noted down, are called qualitative data. Therefore, qualitative data are descriptive, narrative, wordy, and enlightened statements. For the same reason, qualitative data are sometimes synonymous to descriptive data and comprehensive data. For example, how much one loves another cannot always be explained in numerical figures well, but the description and narrations of some events and interactions could better reflect one's love for another. Similarly, how much one hates another could be better represented by descriptive data. Therefore, it is said that qualitative data always reflect the reality, and it has because it has lives. And in anthropology, it is more personalized as ethnographer himself or herself becomes heavily involved with personal, professional, and emotional attachment with the object of study. There is a big quotations here. I just want to leave it. The explanation also unveils that in the name of data collection, quote unquote, an ethnographer in that participates in the people's life to have gained experience of how people experience their world. So data, quote unquote, seems something that an ethnographer experiences by living with the people, learning their language, taking part in their everyday life. Since reflexivity becomes the common feature of today's ethnographic research, power sensitivity, gender sensitivity, and the critique of inside-outside debate, politics of representation, and colonial fantasy of imaging anthropological object have become the guiding principle of contemporary ethnographic research. Qualitative data gain a strong notion of sensitivity, which inserts life into the data. So data in anthropology are not something lifeless record of event, issues, subject, and people. Rather, data have their own lives, which make data real qualitative. What the researchers gains through experience. That's what I briefly wrote. And what about informants, respondents, and data giver? Tottodata. I have also been struggling to use the term informants, respondents, data provider, and I'm not fully convinced about which is the suitable one for ethnographic writing. Informants are those who provide information to the researchers. Respondents are those who respond to the researchers' questions. And data providers are those who provide researchers with data, what they want. But when an ethnographer conducts research, spending months and years, he or she does not to ask questions in the sense that the people of whom the researchers living with become quite so familiar that the people willingly share their joys and sorrows, pains and pleasures, expectations and frustrations, vision and mission of life. When people spontaneously share their lived experience, we cannot definitely consider them as respondent or informant. To some extent, the concept of data provider, quote unquote, and data giver is not always applicable for them because they share their lived experience, what a researcher receives as data. In my fieldwork, I spent long years, took part in their social economic activities, and gradually became part of their everyday life, everyday happening. Therefore, I really need not to ask them to know something what I need to know, because I know that as I have been a part of it. In that sense, the experience I gathered was not provided by the informants, respondents, and data provider in one sense, in the sense of their popular use. If so, then who are respondents, who are informants, and who are data providers? After long years of involvement and engagement with the people, indigenous people in Chittagong Hill Tracts, I have never felt that the villagers are data givers, quote unquote. Therefore, in most of my writings, and anthropologists usually write, I have deliberately avoided an informant said or, quote unquote, according to one of my respondent, quote unquote, data giver or provider's view, quote unquote, but prefer to write, quote, my experience of doing field work in the village, unquote, or, quote, as far as my experience goes in dealing with the villagers, I came to know, unquote, or, quote, my experience of living with them, I realized that, unquote, etc. That's the way how I write. It seems more sensible because in ethnography research, I think experience is more meaningful data. Finally, what actually data mean? I'm giving a couple of sentences I'm reading out. Catherine Marsh points out, data is produced, not given. That is, researcher choose what to call data. This is not just there to be found because people who gave us data, they are not themselves identified as informant or respondent. We researcher brand them as respondent or informant. So, during my long year involvement in the CHT, what I have in that collected as data, of course, I wrote down every single event, issues, a gist of my conversation. I took note of necessary information about kinship terminology, family, marriage, then lineage, residence practices, social, political, economic organizations, myth, religions, belief systems, and necessary code of everyday interactions, everything. Of course, I noted down, but finally, it gives me kind of experience. So, I have very short time, so I'm going to conclude. Clifford Geer's, that's what I wrote in 1973. This is famous book, Interpretation of Culture. Quote, doing ethnography is nothing but self-learning in cultural dislocation. Unquote, page 17. So, actually what we do, we learn ourselves. It's self-learning in cultural dislocations. Finally, now I'm going to give some images here. You can get some kind of idea. This is the journey towards having experience. Then I started to go. It takes 2 days from town to go to the village. Fieldwork is an art of knowing or experiencing another cultures. Other culture is very problematic, so anthropologists now use another culture. Interactions aims to having experience. I said this, for example, key informants. We use key informants as one of the popular tools. So it helps gain deep experience. Then the FGD, focus group discussion, shares collective experience. What actually we gain experience? Life history helps gather experience diachronically. Trying of being there helps experience native's point of view is famous Malinowskian notion. Trying of being there helps experience native's point of view. Participation is for experiencing the people more intimately. Participation is more experience for experiencing the people more intimately. It's also kind of being there. It's a participation. It's a rapport building, depends on experience. Taking everyday notes is for cross-checking the experience. So what actually do we gather experience? FGD is for having collective experience. Deep relations matures with experience. So finally what I want to say, in ethnography research that demands long-term engagement and re-engagement in the fieldwork, living with the people studied as one of them. It is said that participant observation does not essentially depends on how long time one spends in the field, but whether one is considered by the people as one of them and the researcher feels alike. If it is the case, why does a researcher need data, quote unquote, to know the people, understand the meaning of their everyday interactions and their society and culture? Since a researcher becomes one of them, and the people consider the researcher as such, a researcher's experience becomes the real data of the research. I don't claim that experience is the only data, but experience of ethnographer is more significant data in ethnographic research. Thank you all. Yes, finally finish.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for finishing in time. So I had one set of comments just to start off. So Nasir, what is the project about? So that is one thing I was very curious about. And second is you use this word, you translate from Bengali, which is data giving.
Data giver.
Data giver.
Tothodata.
So it's a bit. So in anthropological terms, this giving and receiving is kind of part of gift culture. And so I wondered, how does this, one is how do you see yourself as a receiver of gifts, which you could call a gift here, I mean, in terms of the translation of the term. And second, how do your this world that you're encountering, how do they see the researcher as opposed to the surveyor? Because I'm trying to place it in conversation with the other speakers here. The act of taking information. In your case, it could be more sustained, but just having to partake information is something that is actually interesting. In South Asia, there's 100 years, of engagement with this. So how does it work? So these are the kind of broad comments that I had, and maybe you could.
Should I respond now or to?
It's up to you, and I could open this up to the floor or up to you.
It's up to you. What do you
No.
say?
You tell me.
Okay, just let me a quick respond to your 3 questions. My project is about, actually I started doing my PhD there, is about the relations, transforming relations between state and indigeneity in Bangladesh, in the case of Chittagong Hill Tracts. And I completed my PhD in 2008, and I continued doing my research on this evolving relations of indigeneity within the state formation, nation building, and that's the work I started with. Now recently I'm working on the indigenous activism in Bangladesh, when Chittagong Hill Tracts and also plainland people. This is my project. And Tothodata, maybe many of here are familiar with Tothodata. In Bangladesh, actually this is a very popular term in Bengali. Tothodata means there's the questionnaire, and in the morning there's a huge development sector, so there's a big questionnaires. People are just, the professors are, professor work as a kind of consultant. They just give students big sheets, and they just go to the street and the slum, the village, they fill it up, and they skim back and write down. This very kind of consultant industry that work in Bangladesh, and NGOs, particularly in Bangladesh, 7,000 NGOs are working, and most of them are working for making money. So this is kind of NGO culture and consultancy, and also microcredit. the Grameen and other people, the microcredit, they are also making the big business there. So the huge involvement of this NGO culture established this kind of discourse, this Tuttudata, who give information. For my case, yes, I wrote one passage here on how I struggled initially to get into my research settings, because historically, Chittagong Hill Tracts, there's a historical confrontation between Bengalis and indigenous people. So I'm a Bengali. When I did go there, Bengali treated me as a kind of betrayer, Bengali, working against his own community. And the indigenous people, they considered me kind of, as a part of state, as militarization, Bengalization, all these stuffs. So it was very difficult for me at the beginning to convince both parties. What I already wrote an article on this kind of dilemmas. Finally, actually, I overcame this kind of problem. And I've been working with the Kumi people, Kumi, Kiang, Lusai, Pangua. There's more marginalized within the Chittagong Hill Tracts, even Chakma, Marmads. So, yes, I claim that I earned their belief, trust, and and when I was working, it took actually 2 days from town to go there. So when I go there, I don't come back 2, 3 weeks, 1 month, I stay there. So when I was doing my PhD, I continuously stayed there 18 months. Then later I continued to stay 2 months, 3 months, so in total 3 years. So I was involved in their everyday life. So not essentially I need to ask, what's your name, what's your kinship, who is relations, final kins or consanguine kins. I didn't need to actually ask, because I was part of their life and they were sharing with me. That's why I just don't use the term informant and respondent. That's all.
Thanks. So one thing to take away from here is clearly there is a IT sector in Bangladesh, but it is a different IT sector. It's linked to the NGO industry, and it's a very large information gathering exercise which the NGO and microcredit world, which is actually quite fascinating, because this intervention in the social in India is now one of the thematics of this conference.
Yeah.
And this is something that's extremely fascinating. This large world and the techniques that are coming in insofar as gathering information. So I'll open it up. Yeah. So that's Deepu.
One of which you spelt out, being a Bengali, going into the hill tracts, trying to do research there. The point that you want to make, I'm in complete agreement with that. There is a way in which the researcher's experience becomes the data. And there's a way in which meaning making is the central act that you do, which may be missed in other forms of data gathering. However, when it comes to the politics of data, I would like to hear more about the 7,000 NGOs, because this is now a world that is settled in all parts of the world, especially in our parts of the world, where data gathering of a certain kind happens. And your presence is not only within this community that you're living with, but also in the presence of those other data gatherers. So if you want to speak about that politics, how does this deeper sense of meaning, because this is what anthropologists have always used to debunk other ways of gathering data that you don't understand, that you don't experience, you don't live. That is fair enough, but how does it play itself out on the ground? Where you have a powerful, well-organized complex of well-organized set of actors who do this as routine bread and butter activity day in and night out, within which we are placed.
I'll continue with what Deepu said. There is this practice of note-taking, right? It's a question of cultural translation that is happening as you come from your university academic, background to that locality, and so the note-taking, how does it take place? How what are the filters that work there? Aren't there negotiations taking place, between what you are calling experience, which is gained in time, and which you are saying your note-taking is about checking experience and rechecking experience. So I'm a bit interested in knowing that about that process. Also, languages, there must be a gap in the worldview that those, the speakers of those languages are producing, and the languages that you are comfortable with. So that is also itself should be a story,
Yes.
So I just wanted to juxtapose your Bengali term Totodata with the Latin. If you go to the etymology of data, right? So data comes from the term datum, which is the Latin term, which is thing that is given. And it's a past principle of a term dare, which is to give. So I just found that interesting because since you brought up the term, just to kind of juxtapose what you were saying, because I mean the idea is that you think of people taking data or kind of going out and taking data from the field, right? But actually, the term itself comes from to give.
Yes.
I guess I was wondering if there's a way to hold on to your commitment of ethnographic experience, but push it by thinking about forms of mediation that you're constantly engaging in. So whether it's note-taking, whether it's presenting us with these images as a form of evidence that you were there. So I appreciate your kind of your insistence of holding on to experience, despite the fact that there's been such critique of experience itself in anthropology. So we're so past, in some ways, the Geertz phase, right? Past writing culture. But I think you're trying to, I think there's something that you could hold on to while still pushing the question of mediation. And I'm wondering how you could imagine doing so.
I think, yeah.
Well, too many questions. So it means that either my presentation was so good or it didn't make any sense. Okay. First of all, yes, chronologically, just one after another. So data gathering, particularly in Bangladesh, we have a big data industry in a sense. Because 7,000 NGOs, apart from NGOs, around 500-600 consultancy firm, and also of 8,000 university professors, almost 90% professors are, quote unquote. So, and students, and in Bangladesh we have professional data collectors. And different firms, just you can ask them to give you 500 data collectors, so they will give you, right? And very cheap.
IT industry
is, I should say, it's kind of data collectors industry. It's not IT; is a completely different sector. In that sense, yes. Even in Bangladesh, in many villages, where Dr. Yunus, you might know, you started work in Jobragram. If you go there, you need not to ask any question; they will start responding you. So okay. So what are you going to do? FGD or key informant? What do you need? They are good. So I'm very critical of this entire, and what actually it contributed is decline the quality of scholarship in Bangladesh. But is what they are producing, that's also questionable to some extent. Like, for example, you employed some students, they are going to T-stall, they are filling their own forms and coming back. Sir, I have completed it, right? Yes. So this also, there's a big politics and economy of data. And of course, another question is very good questions, and I would respond it, yes. What I'm using is it could be termed as very analog or manual way of doing field work, but it's not essentially true. And also goes to your questions. How I use these photographs, I use very high power, high resolution camera, and also I video a couple of. I use all modern techniques of data collections, but what actually I felt is when an anthropologist does field work for long term with engagement of the people, finally the experience he or she gathers, it becomes more significant data. Then it reflects in writing, thinking, interpretations. That's the way. And this is a very high resolution photographs. So I used lots of photo, and I made a documentary on Kumi people. So yes, I use modern technology in a sense, but if I respond to your questions, like mediated, actually my the long-term engagement actually helped me to mature my experience of the people. That's what I would respond to your questions. And also to your questions, data taking and data giving. Am I right? Is it your questions? Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. So, your questions, language gap, right? Yes. Yeah, that's true. The language was a big problem at the beginning, but, I was born in Chittagong, and Chittagonian people speak in a different dialects. It's not actually Bengali. The dialects, local dialects of Bengali. And the Pahari indigenous people, they can speak in local dialects. And there's a kind of, actually it's not in Chittagonian language, it's a kind of lingua franca. Like they transform in a different way, so it's very communicating. But what I did, I just learned the Kumi language, Kumi and Mru language, because I felt that learning a language is very important to get insights. So there's a language gap definitely, but for me, it's called epistemic advantage, because I was from the region. That's I could understand actually their language before even I entered. But when I entered, I learned their language. Now I can speak much better than the Kumi people do, because I learned it in a way. And yes, taking data and giving data, I actually, yes, I do agree with you. But I'm not comfortable with this kind of data as a kind of gift. Gift should have different notions of, data is not the gift. There's sometimes data taking. So I don't want to give you any conclusive response to you, because I'm not comfortable. Data is a gift. Data is not a gift in a sense that how we researchers use data, and there should be a good critic. And there's a wonderful book edited by James Ferguson and Akhil Gupta, Anthropological Locations. There's one chapter on this data. Data is not a gift. Yes, I think I have responded all.